Halls of Infusion is one of the new Dragonflight dungeons we'll be taking on in Season 2. This dungeon begins with a longer timer of 35 minutes, so as long as you complete the dungeon within that window, you will upgrade your key. As you start up in the Halls of Infusion, you can decide on the pack on the right or the left as you walk down the stairs. Although it seems like you might be able to walk directly down the middle without pulling, the mobs are just a little too close, so I'd advise choosing one side and taking them out. Geomancers will cast an Earth Shield that will heal a random enemy and reduce the damage they take by 10%, so make sure to kick this. They'll also cast an AoE ability named Seismic Slam, so make sure to sidestep out of the 5-yard radius here. Refty Defenders will be the first tank buster mobs that you'll find in this dungeon. They have a Gushing Wound frontal ability that bleeds any targets hit for 12 seconds, so face these mobs away, and they pair this up with Spear Flurry. Your group should save an interrupt for their demoralizing shout. This will prevent them from decreasing your party's damage by 25% for 8 seconds. Containment Beam from the apparatus is an important channel that you'll want to stop. It deals high single target damage until the channel finishes. This mob also has an AoE ability named Expulse, dealing big holy damage to anyone within 20 yards, so try your best to stop this too. Ravagers will buff their allies' attack and movement speed through their Tailwind aura, so be careful what you pull these mobs with. You'll also want to save an interrupt for their Blazing Gust spell, otherwise they'll deal damage to your entire party and knock you all back. After clearing half of the ring, you'll run down the stairs to the first boss, Watcher Irideus. This boss is a 2-phase encounter and the boss starts at 30% health. During the first phase, Irideus will fire spark volleys at the ground which your group will need to dodge, otherwise it will leave a 10-second magic dot on you. Speaking of magic dots, the Watcher will also apply power overload to 3 random players. Healers can dispel this debuff or let it expire, but be aware that as soon as it is removed, it will drop a power field on the floor that you'll want to avoid, so place these puddles out of harm's way. Tanks will want to face the boss away from the group to avoid hitting them with the boss's frontal, Titanic Fist, which will knock anyone down that gets hit. Finally, during this first phase, the healers should be prepared to use their cooldowns when the Watcher is casting Static Surge. When the boss enters phase 2, he'll begin to channel Ablative Barrier. At this point, nullification devices will start spawning that your tank will need to aggro and tank on top of the boss. Once these devices are killed, they let off a nullifying pulse that inflicts arcane damage and silences anybody within 12 yards, but this pulse will also remove a stack of the boss's ablative shield. You'll need to kill 3 of these devices on top of the boss to fully break the shield, and you need to do this as quick as possible so that Irideus doesn't gain too many siphon powered stacks. Every stack that he gets during this phase will increase his nature damage by 2% for 40 seconds. So the aim of the game here is to break the shield ASAP. Do note though that every time a shield is broken, there will be swirlies you need to dodge. Now that we've defeated the Watcher, we can progress to the next boss. This is what you should know about the upcoming trash. You'll first encounter some curious Swoglets. The only thing you need to watch out for here is the toxin they apply, because this will instantly kill you at 10 stacks. So kite them and CC them as much as possible. Shock Troopers should be stopped when they cast Elemental Focus, otherwise they will buff their lightning bolt into chain lightnings onto the highest threat target. Skulking Zealots will be stealthed and cheap shot the first target they are in combat with. Healers, be ready to save your tank here if you don't get them out of stealth before he gets stunned. These mobs are high priority kill targets, as with every melee attack they increase their attack speed by 4%, so be prepared for that. Dazzling Dragonflies will cast Dazzle, a frontal disorient that you should sidestep as you don't really need to waste the kick here. Flamecaller Amy can be found just before the door to the second boss. You want to interrupt her Pyretic Burst, avoid being hit by the Molten Subduction Swirly, and kick her Cauterize ability so that she doesn't heal. Squallbringer Syrad can also be found here. Just make sure that your tank gathers threat on the Zeppelins that spawn during the fight. Now we're on to the frog boss, better known as the Gulping Goliath. During the fight, rocks will fall that you need to dodge. On these rocks follow 2 curious Swoglets that we met earlier. Nuke these down before you get 10 stacks of their poison and instantly die. Tanks should drag the boss to these adds for extra cleave. When the boss casts Gulp, you'll want one person to deliberately get eaten to prevent the Goliath from getting hangry. This player should pop a defensive, as they will take big damage and also instantly receive 3 stacks of Swog Toxin, so they need to be very careful after this. The boss will leap to a targeted location with Belly Slam. Avoid this swirly at all costs, and finally healers should be prepared for big healing when the boss casts Overpowering Croak and Toxic Effluvia. Once you've defeated the Goliath, you'll continue down towards the next boss, Khajin. This whole area is packed with proto-drakes and different caster mobs. Earthshakers will cast Rumbling Earth, dealing huge nature damage and stunning anyone within 8 yards, so either step out or interrupt this ability. Earthshakers will also buff up subterranean proto-dragons you'll find here with their Primal Affinity aura. These drakes cast a frontal ability named Tectonic Breath, and if buffed up by the Earthshakers, they'll apply a Creeping Mold Disease to 3 players for 30 seconds, dealing nature damage every 3 seconds. This debuff can stack, so make sure this is dispelled. Gale Singers will cast Wind Buffet that you'll need to kick. They also create a thunderstorm that will spawn a pool of electric you'll need to quickly move out of. Note that these Gale Singers will also empower gusting proto drakes that you'll find here. These proto dragons will cast a frontal attack through gusting breath for 3 seconds that you'll need to dodge. Once empowered with primal affinity though, they also gain access to binding winds, stunning one of your party members for 3 seconds, though this can be dispelled. Finally, Ice Callers will cast Ice Shard that you can use hard CC on to stop, and they will empower the Glacial Proto Dragon. These Glacial Dragons will cast Oceanic Breath, another frontal that you'll need to sidestep, but once empowered they will gain access to Deep Chill, inflicting AoE frost damage to your party and applying a Frost Stop for 12 seconds that also reduces movement speed by 30%. Khajin the Unyielding. During the encounter, the boss will pulse out constant ticking damage through polar winds that your healer will need to keep on top of. Healers will also need to spot heal and dispel the player struck with Frost Shock. This will deal a big chunk of a player's health and slow them by 50% for 6 seconds. Whenever Khajin begins to cast Hailstorm, make sure to hide behind ice boulders that are dotted around the encounter. Don't be tricked into hiding behind the broken ones though, as they'll trigger an avalanche when they are broken by the Hailstorm, inflicting massive frost damage to all players within 12 yards of the impact. Make sure to dodge the Glacial Surge at all costs. This ring will start close to her and expand outwards, so stay out for the first tick and then run in close. You'll also need to avoid the Frost Cyclone she aims at a random player. This deals fatal damage and knocks players back, but it's important not to aim this towards any ice boulders as it will break them in the process, making them unsafe for the next hailstorm. After defeating the penultimate boss in the Halls of Infusion, you'll now head towards the Infusion Chamber. Here we'll deal with more Proto Dragons and Ice Callers that we've dealt with before, accompanied by several other mobs. As you approach the final bridge, constant waves will approach you from the left and right side of the platform. If you fail to dodge these waves, they'll deal damage to you and probably knock you off, so keep these waves in the back of your mind the whole time. Aqua Rages will buff their damage by 50% for 15 seconds through Boiling Rage, so make sure you kick this or soothe it if it does go off. As they reach 20% health, they'll cast Tidal Divergence, splitting themselves into 4 Aqualings, so cleave these down, or just kick the long cast. As you near the end of the gauntlet, you'll encounter one last mini-boss named Infuser Saria. Inundate will pulse unavoidable AoE damage to players within 40 yards, and you'll need to interrupt her Aqueous Barrier to prevent her gaining a massive shield. Finally, stay out of her Flash Flood AoE cast, as this will damage you and knock you back, and after defeating this Primalist, the Tsunamis will stop. Except the final boss, the Primal Tsunami. This boss is a 2-phase encounter. During stage 1, you will fight on the main platform until it reaches 100 energy. You'll need to avoid being hit by the infused globules. Failing to do so will inflict high frost damage and apply Waterlogged, a 5-second debuff that slows you and inflicts upfront damage. Note that this can be dispelled. Tanks will want to use active mitigation for the Squall Buffet, knocking them back and applying a focused Deluge debuff. This deals ticking frost damage for 5 seconds, and you'll want to get back into melee ASAP so the boss doesn't cast Undertow, which will deal massive damage to the entire party. Speaking of AoE damage, healers will need to be ready for the boss's Tempest Fury ability, radiating frost damage to all players, so prepare a cooldown for here. At 100 energy, you'll enter phase 2. The boss will cast away, trapping you in a bubble of water and sending you back to the start of the bridge. Here, your goal is to make it back as quickly as possible while dodging the crashing tsunami waves we saw earlier. You'll also be split up into 2 groups here. After making it back to the boss, there will be 4 Primalist Infusers channeling Infuse to the boss, increasing its damage by 1%, and this effect stacks every 5 seconds, so make sure you get back and interrupt quickly. Take out these Infusers and the Primal Tsunami will spawn again. But that's all you need to know for this encounter, and that wraps up Halls of Infusion in Mythic Plus. If this guide did help you out, then please drop a like down below and subscribe to your boy, and until next time, I'll catch you guys later.